But here's the really cool thing about when we take ourselves out of the equation and let God lead. When you let Jesus take the wheel, you don't have to anymore. God will guide you, and he will give you the words to speak, the means to act, the ability to show compassion, the lesson to teach, and the words to preach. We're going to take a look at Paul now. Paul knew that he had to die of himself and be made new again in Jesus Christ, even though it meant being persecuted. Here's what he says in Galatians 2:20. I have been crucified with Christ, and I no longer live, but Christ lives in me. The life I now live in the body, I live by faith in the Son of God who loved me and gave himself for me. We're going to look at this passage again in another way. We're going to expand it a little bit and go to verses 19 through 21, and we're going to read it again in the Message as paraphrased by Eugene Peterson. Before we do this, though, let's take a closer look at Paul for a second. Who was Paul? Can anyone tell me a little bit of his background? He was a Pharisee. Did he have another name? Saul, okay. Yeah, he was a persecutor, okay. Yes, he was Saul. He was a law enforcer, a rule keeper. He was a by-the-book kind of guy. Let's take a look at this passage and see how, when he saw what God was really calling him to, how that transformed him. What actually took place is this. I tried keeping the rules and working my head off to please God, and it didn't work. So I quit being a lawman so that I could be God's man. Christ's life showed me how and enabled me to do it. I identified myself completely with him. Indeed, I have been crucified with Christ. My ego is no longer central. It is no longer important that I appear righteous before you or have your good opinion. And I am no longer driven to impress God. Christ lives in me. The life you see me living is not mine, but it is lived by faith in the Son of God who loved me and gave himself for me. I am not going to go back on that. What Paul is saying is that when Christ sacrificed his life, Paul also died of himself with Christ. And then he let Christ rise again in him so that he was full of the life that Christ was calling him to and leading him through. Paul knew that even though it meant being persecuted and possibly martyred, which he was, that it didn't matter. You see, he had already died of himself. And since he had already died of himself, when he was facing that time of death and being persecuted, it didn't matter because you can't kill a dead man. His physical life didn't matter anymore. He knew that he would live forever with Christ in the kingdom of heaven. So many people in today's society seek immortality. Think of all the vampire shows and movies that are out right now. But this, my friends, is how you get it. We must let God lead us to the cross, where we can sacrifice ourselves in Christ, leave ourselves behind up on that cross, and let Christ rise up in us. In a little bit, we're going to be taking communion. I ask you not to let this be just a time of going through the motions. Make this communion one where you're not only remembering what it is that Christ went through, but also what we are called to do in making the sacrifice of letting our whole inner being die on the cross with Christ and letting Christ rise again, filling every aspect of our lives. As I close this sermon here, I'm going to actually end with a song. Music, for me, often speaks more than somebody up here just speaking. And since I lost some of you at stake at the beginning of the sermon, this is hopefully a kind of a recap, a summary of what I'm trying to get at here. This song is called Lead Me to the Cross. It's written by Brooke Fraser from Hillsong United. It's a pouring out of ourselves and asking God to lead. Savior, I come, quiet my soul. Remember redemption's hill, where your blood was spilled for my ransom. And everything I once held dear, I counted all as lost. So lead me to the cross where your love poured out. Bring me to my knees, Lord, I lay me down. Rid me of myself, I belong to you. Oh, lead me to the cross. You were as I, tempted and tried. Word became flesh, bore my sin and death. Now you're risen, and everything I once held dear, I counted all as lost. So lead me to the cross where your love poured out. Bring me to my knees, Lord, I lay me down. Of myself, I belong to you. Oh, lead me to the cross, to your cross, to your cross. Lead me to your cross. Myself, I belong to you. Oh, lead me to the cross where your love poured out. Bring me to my knees, Lord, I lay me down. Rid me of myself, I belong to you. Oh, lead me. Join with me in singing At the Cross. At the cross, at the cross, where I first saw the light, and the burden of my heart rolled away. It was there by faith I received my sight, and now I am happy all the day. It was there by faith I received my sight, and now I am happy all the day. We're all called to die. Only a few of us will answer that call completely and put ourselves up on the cross, where Christ can come in and fill every aspect of our lives, every space of our being. Let it be you today. Let Christ lead you to the cross.